Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Monday Music. Max is taking a well-deserved break, and so I have the pleasure of being with you this evening. And we're going to be doing some hymn singing, and I'll be explaining a little bit of what the hymns are about. Thank you very much to those who gave me submissions, and we're going to include those as well as a couple of other things that I've selected. And before we start, actually, I'm going to give a shout out to this coming Sunday. Jackie McGrath is going to be with us for morning service on Sunday. And she's, speaking of hymns and hymnals and that kind of things, she's going to be doing a couple of things out of this supplemental Episcopal hymnal called Voices Found. And it is actually a compendium of hymns and songs that were written, the text was either written by women, or the music was written by women, or in some instances, both. So hence the Voices Found, as far as giving credit to all of those women who have contributed so much to the wealth of our hymnals. So that's on Sunday, Jackie McGrath, don't forget. So before we start, let's take a moment to pray. The Lord Almighty grant us a peaceful night and a perfect end. Amen. Okay, so the first hymn is, let me explain too very quickly. What I've done is each of the hymns we're going to be singing sometimes one verses, sometimes a couple of verses. So this is the hymn number out of hymnal 1982. And here are the verses that we're going to sing. So if you have a hymnal there at home, great. There's the hymn number. You can just follow along. This will tell you which stanzas we're going to sing, and here are the words to sing along with. So the first one here, we're doing stanzas 1 and 3, and just a little bit about this. This is a folk tune that was arranged and found, if you will, by Ralph Vaughan Williams, the late 19th century. Yep, he died in 58 actually. Anyway, our hymnal has a number of his hymns in it. This one actually he wrote it was part of a baritone solo suite of a number of songs, and this particular one, it's called The Call, is in his original composition, but it was taken then and made into a hymn. The words are by an Anglican priest, George Herbert. He lived from 1593 to 1633. And as I mentioned, Ralph Vaughan Williams is represented a number of times in our hymnal. And the thing I find interesting is the fact that George Herbert was a priest, but let me quote you something here real quick. Vaughan Williams himself was an atheist at the time that he wrote this, but later he called himself a cheerful agnostic, though this did not prevent his setting this verse in an overtly religious inspiration. And I think it's one of those kind of things that it's amazing how the Lord can use the gifts of all of us in a variety of ways. And Ralph Vaughan Williams certainly has touched the hearts through his music on any number of occasions, and this hymn obviously being one. So, I'm not going to play the hymn all the way through. All of these hymns are very well known. So I'm just going to do a little bit of an introduction, and then I'll sing along with you. So here we go, number 487 Come My Way, and we're doing verses 1 and 3. Okay, so the next one. The next one is, one second here, Glorious Things of Thee Are Spoken, number 522, and we're doing just the first verse. This is again a very familiar hymn. The music was written by Franz Joseph Haydn, and he wrote it, actually, interestingly enough, specifically to be a national anthem. At the time he wrote it, he was wanting to have something that would befit the Emperor Francis II, and he did this tune. It is still it's the national anthem of Germany, but it's been used in numerous hymnals and Christian hymns for any number of denominations. It's also used sometimes as the alma mater of some colleges and universities. So it's well known. So here is a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll go right into the first verse. Glorious things of thee are spoken. Next one is Be Thou My Vision, O Lord of my heart, number 488. And we're going to do two verses, number 1 and number 2. Now, a little bit about this one. This one is sung to an Irish tune, actually, Irish folk tune. No one knows for sure who the author is or the composer. It's been associated with this particular text since 1919, and the tune name is actually Slain, which is a name of a village, town in Ireland. And also, very often you'll notice, if those of you who are paying attention, hymn tunes are often named after the location or the town where they were written. And this Slain is an example of that. So, Be Thou My Vision, we're going to do verses 1 and 2. Here we go. You know, the Episcopal hymn, I've said this before, to some of you anyway, is really known, particularly among musicians, organists, choir directors, music directors, as really being a good hymnal. And I always would be the first to speak for that. One thing, they've done a very good job over the years of providing really good accompaniment for the hymns. And I was thinking about this earlier today. Interestingly enough, they really have made the committees that put together hymnals have done a really good job in knowing which hymns need to be sung in unison and which ones would lend themselves to harmonization and those kind of things. So anyway, the Episcopal hymnal, good thing. So this next one is I Come with Joy to Meet My Lord. It's number 304. We're going to do verses 1 and 4. Now this one, a couple things about this one. First of all, the tune is called Land of Rest, and it's American folk melody. Again, it's one of those kind of things that it's come down to us. Who knows who originally composed it or wrote it, but it's a well-known hymn tune. And speaking of that, I got to do a little show and tell here. So, speaking of hymn tunes, so this is a hymnal that's here in St. Paul's music collection. And this specific hymnal is the Connecticut Harmony, containing a collection of psalm tunes, anthems, and favorite pieces, many of which were never before published, to which are added concise rules of singing, designed for the use of worshiping assemblies and singing societies. This is from 1796, actually, and it has just hymn tunes, and there's actually 4-part harmonies to it. I've not really gone through it yet to pick out. It would be fun to really find some really good hymn tunes and get them arranged. Something that is not well known or not used a lot. But again, it's an example of American folk tunes. And then with this particular one, interestingly enough, the text or the words to this were actually written in 1971. So the text is not that old. And it was written by a gentleman, Brian Wren, who was born in 1936. He's actually an ordained United Reformed Church minister, born in England. And then he moved to the United States. He's married to a United Methodist minister, retired now actually. But I think this is really interesting, some of his observations on his writing of hymns. And he's, again, one of those well-known hymn authors. But anyway, he goes, I come with joy to meet my Lord after I preached a series on the meaning of communion and wanted to sum up some of the things that I've been sharing with my congregation. Most people view communion as a very personal thing between them and God. I wanted to move past that to a feeling of the corporateness of the communion. So the hymn was designed with that agenda in mind. This goes on to say that Brian Wren has been a strong proponent of the view that hymns are poetry and theology, instead of simply music. He has stated a hymn is a poem, and a poem is a visual art form. The act of reading a hymn aloud helps to recover its poetry, and its poetry to move us. The power of language, image, metaphor, and faith expression. So again, I've mentioned this before, occasionally it's just a good thing to read the text without singing them, so that the text of the hymns really speaks for itself. Okay, so here we go. I come with joy to meet my Lord, and we're doing verses 1 and 4. Okay, now this next one, total different perspective. And this one, we're going to have a double sheet here because we're doing verses 1 and 3. Crown him with many crowns. Number 494 in the hymnal, if you're following along that way. And this is interesting. The hymn, or the text, was written, there are two individuals attributed in the hymnal. A Matthew Bridges and a Godfrey Thring. Both English. And so it's written in 1851 by both of them, the text. But here we go. The full song features 12 verses with two very different theological perspectives. The original 6 stanzas were written by Matthew Bridges, who was a Catholic, and were based upon Revelations 19:12, and on his head were many crowns. Then Godfrey Thring wrote 6 new verses because he didn't necessarily agree with the message of the popular hymn. Thring, who was an Anglican clergyman, was concerned that Protestant congregations were singing Catholic theology. Now the different verses are mixed and matched with 3 of the 6 more popular verses being written by Bridges and 3 written by Thring. So we have 5 5 verses here in our hymnal. I have no idea which one wrote which verses, Thring or Bridges, but it's a great hymn. So, and just so you know, the tune of this is Diademata, which diadem crown, okay? So, we're doing verses 1 and 3, crown him with many crowns. Okay, here we go. Here we go, another very anthem-y, joyful song, hymn. This one is joyful, we adore thee. Now hold on one second here, because now I'm going to have to go back behind the camera and make sure that you can still see the text. All right, and we're going to bounce this back a little bit. Okay. Joyful, we adore thee, number 376. We're doing verses 1 and 3. And this one. A gentleman minister by the name of Henry Van Dyke wrote a poem in 1907, and here's a Massachusetts connection. He wrote it while he was a guest preacher at Williams College, and he was staying at the home of the then president of Williams College, who was Harry Augustus Garfield, son of James Garfield, who president was assassinated a number of years before that. Anyway, Van Dyke actually told Garfield that the reason, the inspiration for his writing was the Berkshire Mountains. And so the lyrics first appeared in 1911 in a book of his, Van Dyke's poems, and he actually wrote it with this tune in mind. So it says here, Van Dyke himself said, "These verses are simple expressions of common Christian feelings and desires in this present time. Hymns of today that may be sung together by people who know the thought of the age and are not afraid that any truth of science will destroy religion, or any revolution on earth overthrow the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, this is a hymn of trust and joy and hope." And I was reading that this hymn is generally considered by hymnologists to be one of the most joyous expression of hymn lyrics in the English language. So, Beethoven wrote the tune from his Ninth Symphony, and here we go, verses 1 and 3. Verses 1 and 3. Let me go here. Okay. Sing the last verse on your own so I can really play the accompaniment. Great. Okay. The next one. And we've got to scoot along here. Time flies when you're having fun. This one. All my hope on God is founded. Actually, I think, if I recall, Max and Ollie did this not too long ago during Prayers from the Attic. We're doing verses 1 and 4. Just real quick here, Herbert Howells is the one who wrote the music, and the tune name is Michael, and the reason it's Michael is because Herbert Howells' young 9-year-old son, a number of years before he wrote this, died of polio, and devastated Howells, and so for the rest of his life, he very often would dedicate songs and tunes to his son Michael, hence the name of this hymn tune. Okay, so I'm going to, rather this time, I'm going to play it through, give you an introduction, play it through. I'm going to let you sing along, okay? I'm not going to sing this time on this one, all right? So let's do a little introduction here. Okay. Good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play one more song. And I'm going to let this be basically our closing prayer as well. God be with you till we meet again. And I've got a very nice arrangement of it here. So it actually, this hymn, believe it or not, is not in Hymnal 1982. It is in Wonder, Love, and Praise, which is again one of the supplemental hymnals that we have here at St. Paul's and we sing from very frequently. However, in Wonder, Love, and Praise, the tune that they've given for this text is a tune by Ralph Vaughan Williams, great tune. However, I prefer the tune that was written for this song originally. And it was written actually by a gentleman, minister, director of music actually, at the First Congregational Church in Washington, D.C. And it was written in 1882. And so Jeremiah Rankin is the person's name who was the music director, wrote the text. He had actually written it because he wanted to have a song that his choir could sing at the end of their rehearsals. And he actually contacted then William Tomer, who was also a director of music at a Methodist church in Washington, D.C. And he was the one, Tomer, that wrote the tune that I have always associated this particular hymn to. And I think one that will become is familiar to most of us anyway. So here's the text, and all I'm going to do is play this arrangement and then wish you all a very good evening. So here's the text. And the other thing is, I was thinking about this too, is the fact that the text of this, particularly in today's environment and our being separated from necessity, is one of those things that I think it will really speak to all of us when we say, God be with you till we meet again. So here's the text. God be with you till we meet again. By his counsel's guide uphold you. With his sheep in love enfold you. God be with you till we meet again. Till we meet at Jesus' feet. God be with you till we meet again.